Hello, my name is Ashani Yapa. I'm from Sirus Migration. Welcome to the first live session on Fridays. So from now on, every Friday at 4 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a skilled migration session. So the idea behind it, or what I want to deliver from there, is share the knowledge that you need to get your Australian skilled migration right and get your permanent residency the quickest and the cheapest and the best suitable way possible for you. So this is our first live session. In today's video, we are going to be covering about what is skilled migration, what visas are available, just the basics. So first of all, before we go any further, I would like to apologize to people who already know about the things that I'm going to talk about today. But I'm just going to assume that my audience doesn't know too much about skilled migration, so I want to teach them from the beginning, from the basics, what they need to know to get the skilled migration right. So before we go any further, please post your questions. If you're on Facebook, I think you can type them, same with YouTube. If you have any other further questions, you can email us. If you don't want to disclose your personal information in a live session, you can always email us admin@sirus.com.au, and you can call our office 1300 074 787, and I'm coming live to you from our Brisbane head office. So if you're offshore, if you're in Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, I know that we are celebrating our New Year's today. Happy New Year to you. Without any delay, let's get to skilled migration. So Australian skilled migration. There are many ways to get visas for Australia, and one of the best, quickest ways is through skilled migration. So that means the applicant has to have a education background and a skill, and they need to meet a certain amount of points, and it goes through a system called skill select. So you have to first express your interest through an EOI, and then you get the invitation from the state government through a system called skill select. And once you have that invitation, then we can go ahead and create your visa application. So that is the process always. You can't create a visa application unless you have an expression of interest put in the system and you get an invitation. So that is the system. As I said, the system's called skill select. You can look into it a little bit more, how to get your expression of interest into this skill select system. I will cover these things in detail in my upcoming videos. But for now, I think, Mario, let's go to the next slide. So there are three main visa subclasses that are available to people who's interested in skill migrating to Australia. Whether you are onshore in Australia or whether you are offshore outside of Australia, has even never been to Australia, still they are the same three visa subclasses. First one is called subclass 189. Second one is called subclass 190, and third and the last one is called subclass 491. So don't get me wrong, there are many other visa types available, but these are just the point-based skilled migration visas. So let me first talk about subclass 189. I'll compare the three as well. That way even you can figure out, what's the right subclass for me. So for subclass 189, again, it's a point-based system. You need to have minimum 65 points to have an expression of interest lodged into a skill select system. So subclass 189, it's completely independent. There is no state involved, and you don't get any points, any extra points from any state or any federal government or from the federal government. So subclass 189, 0 points. Subclass 190, that's a state-based visa. So if you want to do subclass 190, then you have to select which state am I going to apply, or am I going to apply for one state or few states. Then again, you need to look at that state and see, is my skill needed in that state, if I apply to that state, what are my chances? So that's subclass 190, that's state based. 189, there is no state involved at all. Subclass 491, then again, it's a skilled migration visa. It's fairly new visa compared to the other ones, subclass 189, 190. The difference is state gives you 15 points, which is great, because imagine if you only have 50 points on your own, you are still eligible because state gives you 15, that makes it to 65, and then you can go into a skill select system. So that's the points, how many points the state gives you for each visa subclass. And the next ones, again, you need to have 65 points for all of these 3 visas. I think in next week's session, I'm going to talk about the point system, how you can score points in the point system, because there is a points table. You get points for your age, for your English, for your work experience, for your educational qualification. If you're a single or if you have a partner, you can claim different points. You can claim points for studying in Australia, studying in regional, professional year. I think I already mentioned you can claim up to 20 points for your work experience. So that's how you come up with the 65 points. You add the points for your age and other different criterias and see, okay, how many points I'm sitting at. So if someone's only sitting at 50 points or 60 points, then there's no point even looking at subclass 189 for them, because they don't meet the minimum points requirement. Then they move into subclass 190 or 491. So that's why it's important to know the differences between the 3 visas and the eligibility criteria, so you can figure out, okay, this is the right visa, and that's how that's what the requirement I have to meet. So let's the next one is, so all 3 of these visas, as I mentioned earlier, it's point based. So if you don't meet the minimum points, then you can't get into the skill select system, or there is no point going ahead. That's why you need points. And for all of these 3 visas, the main applicant has to be under 45 years of age. So that's also a requirement, that sometimes a requirement that our clients are a bit struggling with, but it's the main applicant. And also when I'm talking about main applicant, I want to mention that for all of these 3 visa subclasses, you can include your family, your spouse and your dependent children. So the dependent children are any child of you or your spouse who's under the age of 18. They can also be over 18 up to 23 if they're full-time students, or if they're disabled, then they can be any age. So that they are your dependents. And dependents don't have to meet any of the requirements like age or English or any other qualifications. Dependents can be included as long as they're a member of your family unit. So again, the age requirement is just for the main applicant. And the next and the most important, where I should have started actually. Okay, who's eligible for these visas? As I said, as the name suggests, it's called skilled migration. So it's obviously for people who are skilled. So what are the skills? How do Australia figure out who's skilled? Right, Australia has a system. They have few occupation lists, if I say it that way. So these occupation lists are made into few different categories. So the first one is, or the most commonly used one is called MLTSS, which is medium to long term skill occupation list, which means they are the skills Australia needs in the medium to long term, not just short term. So I will actually make these lists available to you as a link to this video. I don't know how that's possible. I'm sure Mario can make that work. So you can go and click and see, is my occupation in one of those lists? So if you were to apply for subclass 189, as I said, there are few occupation lists, but your occupation has to be on the medium to long term list. If your occupation is on any of the other lists, but it's not on the medium to long term list, then you can't get 189. For subclass 190, as I said, it's a state decided system. So the state decides who do we want for this financial year. It could be different for the next financial year. For example, during COVID, the list was extremely small. There were different lists, but state chose their own list. But now most of the states invite people who are on the medium to long term list, STSOL, which is the short term list, and also ROL, which is the regional list. So there are the three lists, and most of the states for 190 invite people from all these lists. So that's, I think, about over 600-700 occupations that you can apply from. And also subclass 491, all the lists are included in subclass 491, and state can have other occupations added to it as well, depending on the demand at that time. So then again, you need the age, you need the points, you get points from different states, and also you need to have an occupation on a list before you can go ahead. The next point I want to mention is, before we go to the table, you also need to get something called a skills assessment for all of these three categories. So now I said, okay, you need to have an occupation and a qualification to go with that occupation, and we need to provide these two things to an assessing authority in Australia and get this qualification and work experience assessed, and that's called a skills assessment. Before, without getting a skills assessment, then again you can't go forward with a EOI into skill select. I know there are a lot of words I am using, technical words, you may not know them, but if you're really interested about this system, when you do your research, you will come across these words all the time and you'll be an expert before you know it. And also I want to talk about the next step is figuring out if this visa is right for you, is the term of the visa. So subclass 189 is direct permanent residency. So if you're offshore, if you get subclass 189, you enter Australia as a permanent resident. Same with subclass 190. It's also permanent residence. And Australian permanent residency lasts for 5 years. It's a 5-year visa. And if you stay in Australia 4 years out of the 5 years, then you are eligible to apply for citizenship as well. But subclass 491, it's not permanent residency. It's called a provisional visa. So it comes with few conditions. If you fulfill the conditions within the 5 years, then you are eligible to lodge your permanent residency. So again, subclass 491, it's a provisional visa granted for 5 years. The requirements are, you need to stay in Australia for 3 years in one of the regions, and then work for 3 years and get your tax returns done for 3 financial years. Then you will be eligible to lodge the 191 permanent residency. You also have to meet the minimum income threshold. You need to work and meet the minimum income threshold to be eligible as well, and the minimum income threshold now it's about 54,900, and this can change every year. The next point is, where can you stay if you get different one of these visas? So subclass 189, as I said, it's federal government program, so you can stay anywhere in Australia once you have this visa. There is no restriction for you to be limited to one state or one employer. So you're free to do anything you want. There are no conditions attached to this 189. Subclass 190, again, the invitation is given from the state. So the state expects you to live in that state for at least 2 years, and then you can move wherever you want. Whereas subclass 491, again, state gives you the invitation. State gives you the invitation based on the fact that you're saying, I am going to be living in regional. So you are agreeing to live in regional area. For example, if you get the Queensland 491, Queensland has many regional areas. You don't need to limit yourself to one regional area. Once the visa is granted or at any point, you can move from one regional in Queensland to a different regional, but you can't move the state. The requirement is for you to live in any regional area in your nominated state for 3 years at least, and then lodge your permanent residency, then you can move once it's granted. So that's the difference between 189, 190 and the 491. That's a major difference between one of those visas. That's why sometimes we say 189 and 190 is more preferable, but sometimes people are not eligible for that, so they obviously go for subclass 491. So the next one, again our clients ask is about Medicare. So all of these 3 visas, you're eligible for Medicare and also children's education. All of these visas you will get free education for school-aged children. That's again a good benefit of getting Australian skilled migration or any other way permanent residency. So the next one, again, I think I already talked about skilled assessment, because without a skill assessment there is no way we can move forward. I will talk a little bit more in detail about skills assessment since we have a bit of time. Alright, so there are few skill assessing authorities in Australia that we deal with kind of on an everyday basis. The main one is called Vet Assess. So once you go to your list of occupations, on the right hand side you can see that what is the assessing authority for that different occupation. So for example, restaurant manager, we go to Vet Assess. Chefs and cooks and other managerial people, or it could be a fitter, welder, so we go to Vet Assess or TRA mainly. But if you're an accounting background, accountant, tax auditor, taxation accountant, management accountant, then we go to IPA or CPA. But if you have an IT background, then we go to Australian Computer Society, ACS. If you're of an engineering background, then we go to Engineers Australia. So they are the main skill assessing authorities that we deal with pretty much on an everyday basis. Or if you're a management professional or managing director, then we go to IML. So, but there are other ones as well that we come across from time to time, but they are the main skill assessing authority. So as I said, so first you need to figure out, okay, this is the right visa subclass for me, 189, 190 or 491. How do you do that? You look at your points table and you figure out how many points you're sitting at. And if you're sitting at a really low point score, then you normally go for 491. But if your point score is really good, 80, 90 points, I wouldn't just actually say 80, 90 points, because we have been getting invitations on quite low points as well. So, but if your point score is sitting at a high level, then you go for subclass 189 or 190. Then again, you look at your occupation. Is it on MLTSS? Then you can also go for subclass 189. I also want to mention that you can lodge few EOIs at the same time. We don't really recommend to go and create many EOIs in the skill select system, because it's the same system, they cross check anyway. But if you want, you can, for example, lodge 189, 190 and 491. Select that all in the same EOI, and whichever you're eligible, you will get the invitation. You may not be eligible for 190, but the same state may give you invitation for 491. So that's how the skill select system work. So now you know your age, you worked out your points, you worked out where your occupation lies within which list. Based on that, you work out, okay, this is the visa I am eligible for. Then you look at getting your qualifications and getting your skill assessment in order. And you approach the skill assessing authority and apply for a skill assessment. Keep in mind though, some skill assessing authorities, Engineers Australia and Accounting Skills Assessment, wants you to have your English academic IELTS or PTE score before they can start processing your skill assessment. And that brings us to the English requirements. All of these visas, subclass 189, 190, 491, needs you to sit for an English test. If you get competent English, which is IELTS equivalent to 6, you don't get any points, but you can still be eligible to lodge one of the visas. But if you want to score points and get into a higher score on your point system and get to maybe from 491 to 190, then I would highly recommend you to get a really high score on English. And for this points purpose, you don't need to sit for academic English. It can be general English. So I think right now you have a bit of an idea about the 3 subclasses that are available to you, which is 189, 190 and subclass 491. And then how many points does the state give, whether it's a permanent residency, what are the benefits for family and children, where can you apply them from, and you need a skill assessment, you need to be under 45, and you need to have certain amount of English before you can go ahead. I hope they are clear. I think I'm going to stop talking about skilled migration visas now and answer some of the questions. And then if I feel like, I need to talk more, once I look at the questions, give you more information, I will do that. First question is extremely interesting. Ankit Joshi is asking me why VETAS is taking so much time. I know it's extremely painful. And also, Ankit, to add to that, VETAS, they have a priority process and that's not working really well for us at the moment as well. So why they're taking so much time? That's because all the state governments and federal government opened up. They were closed for so long and they really opened up. Like December, I think there was about 30,000 or some big number of invitations issued. So if you can imagine, people don't really need a skill assessment to lodge an EOI, but they have 60 days to get a skill assessment once your invitation is received. So all these people, plus all the people who are getting ready to lodge an EOI, they now have an influx of people applying to VETAS, because VETAS handles the most number of occupations. That's why they are busy. I have clients waiting for an extremely long time as well. So, get in there quick and just wait and get your skill assessment done. I've got Denushka asking, for 491, do we have to work in a company in regional area also, or just live in regional area enough? So Denushka, to answer that question, okay, before you lodge a 491, most states want you to be living and working in regional. But that also changes. For example, a really good example, Victoria now invites people who's living in metropolitan Victoria. So you don't even have to be living in regional to get 491. But once you get the 491 approved, that's a whole different story, because then you have to start living and working, and if you have children, even schooling in regional. So you pretty much have to move to a regional and start living in that regional for you to be eligible for permanent residency. But before you get the visa, it's actually the state decides whether you need to be living and working. For example, right now in Queensland, to get a 491 invitation, you need to be living and working in regional Queensland for 3 months. So you need to have a permanent full-time job for 3 months and also a contract for 12 months. That's how you get the invitation. But once the invitation's here, then you move to regional and live there, work there, study there for 3 years to get your permanent residency. Hope that answered that question. I've got Pradeep asking, please talk about subclass 482 labor agreement processing time, because I have lodged my visa application in November 2022. But now that time my visa status shows received. Pradeep, please have a chat with your migration agent and also your company, because labor agreements, it's supposed to be really quick. I can't really comment too much because I don't know a lot about your specific case, but I think one thing that can be done is your company can provide a letter explaining how critical your position is, and then with that letter your migration agent can ask for an expedite decision. We do that a lot for our clients, but recently we didn't even have to do that because nominations and visas get approved in days now for 482. I can see really extremely fast processing for subclass 482. I've got Prasadika asking, hi ma'am, I'm Prasadika. I have a higher national diploma in hospitality management and an academic IELTS score of 7. My age is 34. Am I eligible for 491? See, this is a perfect case. Please send me an email. There are other things. So if you have a score of 7, that means you have 10 points. And if your age is 34, that means you have 25 points. And if your higher national diploma is equal to a bachelor's degree in Australia, that means you have 15 points. And let's assume you're single, then you have 10 points. So 25, 35, 45, 50. So that means you have 60 points. This is just with some assumptions as well because I don't know the full story. Then if you have 60 points, yes, you're eligible for subclass 491 because state's going to give you extra 15 points, which makes it to 75 points. Yeah, given if these assumptions are right, then yes, you are eligible for 491. If we can get you a skill assessment, we can lodge an EOI in Skill Select and get you going for 491. I've got Aditya's asking, what type of question asked by assessment for trade occupation? I am applying for civil engineering technician. All right. Bit tricky. There are a list of questions as well. But civil engineering technician, I wonder where you studied. If you could please get back to me if your qualification is here from Australia, then I don't think there's going to be a technical interview. You can just get the skill assessment. Denushka is saying thank you so much. Thank you again for coming live and watching this live session. Thanks to everyone. I've got Prasadika. Prasadika saying she sent an email. That's good. Denushka is saying, according to the current visa grant, does 491 take 30 months as in the website, or is it less than the given time? Because 30 months is a very long time. I don't think 491 takes 30 months, but it can take 30 months if the website said so. But also I want to say something that I have seen. So this visa processing, it's like a big wheel. So they start putting more stuff and making it faster, but then they get a backlog and then the time goes really long. So it just goes in a circle. So when it says 30 months, don't just think that it's going to be 30 months forever. It will come down to 12 months and 7 months and 6 months, and then it will go back up. So hopefully your 491 will be granted before 30 months. And also, Denushka, I'm hoping you are onshore, so you can just continue with your life. Don't need to worry too much about that. But if you're offshore, that can be a pain, which I completely understand. Aditya Sharma is saying, okay, you got the qualification from India. So are you going through the CDR process, Aditya? Okay, if you can reply to that, that'll be good. In the meantime, Abdul's asking, working for a company which does not have a commercial address as a technician in a regional area is fine for 491. Okay. I think this is what we need to look at. So you need to be based in this regional area while you're working. So maybe your business doesn't have a commercial address, but your actual work is in regional. I think it has to be. Otherwise, how can you justify that you're working in a regional area? Because you need to really prove that you're working and living in regional. And they are kind of onto you. They can immigration asks for bank statements now, so they can see your bank statement and figure out actually where you lived. So your bank statement will have where you filled your petrol, filled your fuel, and where you did your groceries and things like that. So we have to be very mindful, because they also only need genuine people for regions. I've got Amruta saying, hello Amruta. What are the chance for priority for cafe and restaurant manager for 75 points, 491 in Queensland. So are you based in Queensland or you are offshore? So if you're based in Queensland for 75 points 491, I think there's a good chance. If you have already lodged your 491, I hope you went and applied for the priority processing. Did you apply for the priority processing? Because there was a time to apply for priority processing from 4th of April to 10th of April. So if you applied, I think there's a good chance. Oh, that's really good. Hopefully you can hear from them very soon. If you don't hear from them, send an email and just follow up after a while. They're really good with responding normally. I think that's all the time I have for questions today. It's 4:30. Again, this session will happen every Friday, 4 o'clock from 4 to 4:30. For 20 minutes, I will share my knowledge about skilled migration, everything you need to know to get your EOI right, get your skilled migration right in all the states in Australia. And then I'll also invite you to ask as many questions as you like, and then I'll try my best to answer them in the session. Thanks so much for watching this first live session. Oh, okay, Aditya, before I go, I'll quickly read your question. No, ma'am, no CDR report. I have a work experience plus 3-year diploma BTech degree, and I'm applying for civil engineering technician. Okay. Aditya, can you please send me an email? I don't know if you already have a migration agent who's helping you to do this skill assessment. If not, we can also assist you to go through this process. We might not be able to give you the whole, what they're going to ask, but then we can definitely guide you with getting your documents together. Okay, Amruta is saying, sorry, last please. I do not have 7 each. I have only 6 band. Will that be okay? Oh, okay. Amruta's 491 in Queensland. I would really recommend you to get 7 in each band, Amruta. That way, I think you will have a really high chance. So if you can work hard these days to get your band score up to a 7, why don't you try PTE? I've had a lot of good things about PTE. It's being a bit easier than IELTS sometimes, so maybe try PTE. See if you can increase your points to that proficient English, which I think will definitely help you move along. Okay, Prasadika is saying she's going to send me an email and asking me to reply for the email. Yes. Also, if you could please send copy admin@sirus.com.au, then you'll definitely get a reply really quick. Thank you so much again, guys, for listening. I hope I helped even a little bit, and then I'll see you again next Friday.